Let's get one thing straight. This isn't a story about magic beans. Not really. It's about hunger, the kind that twists in your gut, that makes mothers sell the only thing they have left, and boys trade safety for something they can't explain. We were told it was a fairy tale, a foolish boy, a cow, some enchanted seeds, and a giant in the sky. But what if that story is just a mask, a faded version of something far older, far darker? Because buried beneath that beanstalk, beneath the roots and soil and silence, is a secret that stretches back over 5,000 years to a time when people believed you could climb to heaven, but only if you dared to steal from the gods. And that's what this story really is, a memory of a theft so bold it had to be rewritten for children, disguised as fantasy. But it wasn't fantasy, it were fire, hunger, and the sky. We all grew up with the tale. A poor boy named Jack, a desperate mother, a single cow, their last hope, walking on shakier legs and ribs that could be counted through its skin. The town had nothing more to offer them. No work, no bread, no warmth, just whispers and the kind of silence that settles into bone. So Jack sets off to sell the cow. It's the only thing left to trade. He's supposed to come back with money. He returns with beans, not gold, not even food, just 5 small beans. His mother, rightfully, loses her mind. She screams, she cries, she throws the beans out the window and collapses beside the fire, if there even was one. And then, sometime in the night, something happens, a tremor in the soil, a sound like breath beneath the floor. And by morning, a beanstalk, thick as a tree, has split the earth and clawed its way into the sky. Up Jack climbs, higher than roofs, higher than the hills, past clouds and into cold wind that no bird dares fly. And at the top, a world not meant for him, a castle, a giant, a wife who takes pity, and treasures. Strange, impossible treasures, a hen that lays golden eggs, a harp that sings, bags of coins that never run dry. Jack steals. He runs. The giant chases him back down the stalk, roaring the words we all know. Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. But Jack is fast, desperate. He cuts the stalk, the giant falls, and Jack somehow is a hero. That's how we're told it ends. Poor boy outsmarts the monster. Magic wins, hunger is gone. But let's look again. Jack didn't win treasure. He stole it. From a being who lived above the clouds, who guarded gold, song, and life itself. Jack wasn't invited. He trespassed. He climbed a sacred ladder, broke into a forbidden world, and took what was never his. And when the being came after him, he killed it. Then he told the story like a joke, a silly fairy tale for children, as if it hadn't once been something holy, as if he hadn't stepped into the realm of gods. We forget that part. We forget that the beanstalk didn't just rise. It opened a passage, a path between earth and sky, between man and something more. And every element in that story, the beans, the stalk, the theft, the fall, has roots that run far deeper than we've been told. Because this isn't just Jack's story. Versions of it appear in ancient Greece, in Mesopotamia, in the Vedas, among Norse legends. A boy, a tree, a ladder, a god, a theft, a punishment. We called them myths, but maybe they were memories. Jack's story, as we know it, was first written down in 1734 in a story called The Story of Jack Spriggins and the Enchanted Bean. But even then it wasn't new. The tale had been told in taverns and around fire pits for centuries. It passed from mouth to mouth, changing with every voice. Sometimes Jack was clever, sometimes he was cruel, sometimes he killed the giant. Other times, the giant let him go. But here's the strange part. Jack's story, this whole business of beans and beanstalks and sky giants, isn't just English. It isn't even just European. Go far enough across borders, and you'll find shadows of this tale in places that never touched England's shores. In Norse myths, the gods kill a giant named Ymir, and from his body they build the world. But before that, Ymir fed himself by licking salty ice. He was massive, primordial, dangerous. The first beings of the sky lived above, connected to the world below by Yggdrasil, a tree that wasn't just a tree but a cosmic bridge. In India, old Vedic hymns speak of Soma, a sacred plant that lets mortals commune with the divine. Those who consumed it could rise, spiritually, cosmically, toward the heavens. The ladder wasn't physical, it was inside the self, but the image remains, an ascent triggered by something small, something ingested. A seed, a leaf, a bean. And in the Arne Thompson Uther Index, the global catalogue of folk tales, Jack's story is listed as Type 328, the boy who steals treasure from the giant's home. It appears everywhere. In Italy, a boy climbs a pillar to steal a golden bird. In Norway, it's a magical ladder. In West Africa, a vine touches the sky and spirits watch from above. In the Philippines, a child climbs a tree to take light back from a sky-dwelling god. The names change. The object shifts, sometimes gold, sometimes song, sometimes fire. But the pattern remains. A poor child, an impossible journey upward, a theft from the heavens, and sometimes a fall. So what are we really looking at? Is Jack just a boy who got lucky? Or is he the descendant of 1,000 stolen stories, retellings of a single ancient human instinct? To look up and want what waits in the sky. It grew overnight, from the ground where despair had taken root, upward, through the roof past the clouds into silence. A beanstalk that wasn't just a miracle, but a message. Because in stories like this, nothing is random. Every object carries weight. Every action, a memory. The stalk wasn't just a way to climb, it was a bridge. In myth, we call this concept axis mundi, the world axis, the cosmic spine, the one thing that links everything together. It's not always a beanstalk. Sometimes it's a mountain, sometimes it's a tree, sometimes it's a pillar of smoke or a river that flows backward. But in every version, it does the same thing. It connects the earth to the heavens, the human to the divine, the mortal to the impossible. In Norse mythology, it was Yggdrasil, a vast tree whose roots curled through the underworld, whose branches touched the realm of the gods. In Mesopotamian cosmology, it was a ziggurat, a man-made mountain meant to reach the sky. Climb it and you approach the gods. In Mesoamerican belief, it was the saber tree, a sacred trunk connecting the living to the ancestors and the stars beyond. And in the Bible, it was a ladder. And Jacob dreamed, and behold a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold the angels of God ascending and descending on it. The imagery repeats, not because it's borrowed, but because it's remembered. Something in us always reaches up, even in dreams, even in despair. And when the story of Jack was shaped, whether 300 years ago or 3,000, it carried that memory of a time when people believed you could go higher, if only you found the right path. The stalk, then, isn't just magic. It's sacred. It grows where nothing should grow. It bends the rules of Unse. It opens a way. But like all divine roads, climbing it comes at a cost. Because once you leave the world of men, you don't come back the same. And what you take from above might not belong below. High above the clouds, in a castle too large for human hands, lives the giant. We imagine him cartoonish, goofy, bumbling, slow. But that wasn't how he started. In the old stories, he was something far older, far more terrifying. The giant wasn't just big, he was ancient. A being from the time, before kings, before heaven, had rules. Jack climbs into his home, and what he finds isn't just treasure. It's forbidden knowledge in gold and song, a harp that sings by itself, a goose that lays eggs made of light, a bag of coins that never empties. There are not objects, they're artifacts, pieces of something sacred, and Jack takes them. Every time he returns, he steals more. Every time he leaves the giant with less. And the giant, he roars, he smells blood, he chants the old phrase, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman." To us it sounds silly, but to folklorists it's an echo, an ancient refrain, something remembered but not understood. Some even believe it mimics languages long gone, Celtic, Brythonic, Proto-Germanic, war cries, ritual chants, words that meant danger. Because giants in myth don't just chase, they devour. In Greek mythology, Cronus, the father of the gods, ate his own children to prevent a prophecy. In the Bible, giants known as the Nephilim were said to consume everything, land, animals, people, until the world could no longer bear them. In Basque legends, the Gentilak were mountain giants who hurled boulders and ate shepherds whole. In Norse myth, the world itself was formed from the corpse of a slain giant, Ymir, his flesh turned into earth, his bones into mountains, his skull the sky. Giant doesn't just mean big, it means original, untamed. Before laws, before gods became clean and white and dressed in gold. The giant is the one who kept the power of the sky, and Jack, a child of earth, climbed up to take it. He wasn't invited, he wasn't worthy, but he was hungry, so he took, and when the giant came for him, he cut down the beanstalk and let the old god fall, just like that. The sky fell with him, and we wrote it off as a happy ending. But what if it wasn't? What if the giant wasn't the monster? What if he was a guardian, a keeper of the old ways, a relic of a time when power belonged in the heavens, not in the hands of those who would trade a cow for beans? And what if, when Jack killed him, something far bigger died too? 5 beans, that's all he came back with. Not gold, not food, just 5 tiny seeds, and yet, within those seeds, something impossible. The beanstalk, the path, the scale, but what are beans, really? In stories, plants aren't just plants, they carry meaning. They grow meaning. In ancient myths, a seed is a promise and a threat. Something small but full of consequence. Something buried that refuses to stay dead. Think of the apple in Eden. One bite, one choice, and paradise is gone. The seed gives knowledge, but knowledge breaks things open. Jack's beans were never just magic. They were forbidden. In Pythagorean tradition, beans were sacred. It was said they housed the souls of the dead. Pythagoras himself refused to eat them, because eating a bean might mean eating an ancestor. In Egypt, the blue lotus wasn't just beautiful, it was divine. It opened with the sun, closed with the dark, a symbol of rebirth, a living metaphor for the cycle between heaven and earth. In the Vedic texts of India, soma was both a plant and a god. Those who consumed it gained divine insight. But soma wasn't for everyone. Only the worthy could drink it. Only the initiated could survive it. Even in Mesoamerica, the sacred cacao bean wasn't just food, it was currency, it was blood, it was used in rituals to speak to the gods. A small thing, swallowed, planted, transformed, the bean is always the gateway. Jack trades his cow for seeds, and in doing so he trades flesh for fate. Because in every culture, beans are tied to life cycles. To birth, to death, to what comes after. They grow silently, they split the soil, they push toward the sun without permission. They rise like the stalk, like Jack. And maybe that's why they're dangerous. Not because they're magical, but because they're alive in a way we've forgotten how to seize. A plant is not just a thing, it's a messenger. And Jack's beans, they didn't just grow, they called something ancient. They cracked open the boundary between this world and another. They didn't ask if Jack was ready, they just rose. And what came down after was something we've been trying to explain ever since. Jack is always described as a poor boy, but that's not who he is, not really. He's not innocent, he lies, he sneaks, he steals, he kills, but somehow we cheer for him. We're told he's clever, brave, a hero, but look closer, and you'll see a different figure emerge. Not a peasant, not a victim, but a trickster. A force older than morality, older than law. Jack belongs to a long line of cosmic thieves, beings who broke into the divine and came back with fire. In Greek mythology, there's Prometheus. He steals flame from Olympus and gives it to mankind. For that, the gods chain him to a rock and an eagle eats his liver every day. In Norse myth, there's Loki, shapeshifter, liar, joker. He plays both sides. He causes chaos, and yet, he makes things happen. In Native American stories, Coyote tricks the gods, steals light, shakes the world. He's both destroyer and creator. And in West African tales, there's Anansi the spider who climbs to the heavens to steal the stories of the gods. He returns, spinning them into the world like silk. Jack climbs too. Not to worship, not to serve, but to take. Like them, he's not interested in permission. He's interested in power. He finds the path others fear. He sees the line between worlds and crosses it. But that crossing, it comes with a cost. In many cultures, that figure, the one who dares to enter the divine, isn't called a thief. He's called a shaman. The one who journeys through realms, who speaks with gods, who walks between the living and the dead. But shamans don't come back unchanged. They bring knowledge, but they leave something behind. A piece of themselves, a voice, a shadow. And maybe Jack left something too. Maybe that's why he can never climb again. The stalk is gone. The world above sealed. What he stole, he kept. But what he lost, we never ask. Because we don't like to admit that tricksters pay for their gifts. That fire always burns. That wisdom comes from wounds. We just tell the story as if it ended well. But it didn't. It ended with a boy looking up, at a sky he could never reach again. While Jack climbed into the clouds, someone stayed behind. His mother. Alone. No cow. No son. no food, just an empty house and a window where a stork had split through the sky, and silence. We forget about her. Most versions barely mention her after the beans are thrown out. She becomes a background figure, a frame for the boy's adventure. But what happens to the one left behind? She sent him to market with her last hope, not for riches, not for miracles, just for bread. He returned with beans, and then he vanished into the sky. What kind of mother doesn't weep for that? Jack's ascent is exciting, but her wait is terrifying. Every hour she sits in hunger, every night she listens for footsteps that never come. She is the soil that gave birth to the stork, and then lost everything to it. In mythology she has many names. Demeter, who loses her daughter to the underworld and lets the earth die in her grief. Hera, abandoned while Zeus conquers the skies. Mary at the foot of the cross. Mother Earth, bleeding each time something rises from her and never returns. And in some of the oldest stories there is a pattern. The one who journeys only succeeds because someone else was sacrificed. In ancient agrarian rituals the ground had to be fed, not just with seed, but with blood. To bring harvest, something precious had to be given up. In Mesopotamia, temples were built over the buried bodies of the first sons. In Europe, ploughs were once dragged across land soaked with sacrificial offerings, symbolic or real. The myth of the magic bean is no different. The beans grew because something was lost, something was paid, and that payment wasn't gold, it was trust, love, a mother's only son. We like to believe Jack is clever, that he saved them, that he brought back magic. But ask yourself, what did his mother see when he returned? A bag of coins, a golden egg, a harp that sings, or a boy with blood on his hands, and the sky behind him closed forever? Jack's journey may have brought back treasure, but it didn't end the hunger. Because hunger isn't always in the belly. Sometimes it lives in the silence, in the waiting, in the place where something grew and then was gone. Long before Jack, long before castles and coins and fairy tales, human beings built ladders to the sky, not with wood, not with vines, but with ritual. In the ancient world, reaching the heavens wasn't a fantasy. It was a goal, a necessity. The earth was harsh, the gods were distant. So people tried to close the gap. In Mesopotamia, they built ziggurats, stepped temples stacked toward the stars. They weren't meant to be seen from afar, they were meant to be climbed. By priests, by kings, by souls on the edge of death. Every brick was a prayer, every step a question thrown upward. Will you hear us now? In India, they imagined Mount Meru, the cosmic axis. At its peak sat the gods. Below, the world of men. Between them, winds, fire, serpents, and time. In Egypt, pharaohs were buried beneath pointed tombs, pyramids, designed not just to house the dead, but to launch them upward, into the afterlife, into the stars. Even the Bible tells the story of Babel, a tower so tall it challenged heaven. God, angered by the arrogance, shattered their language, so they could never build such unity again. Different cultures, same instinct, climb, connect, transcend. And perhaps most haunting, they believed it could work, that the divine wasn't sealed off, that with the right structure, the right offering, the right words, a person could step into the realm of gods. They didn't grow beanstalks. They engineered belief. They didn't tell stories about ladders. They built them. And every time they did, they faced the same paradox. To rise, something had to stay behind. A sacrifice, a death, a silence. So when a Jack's beanstalk split the clouds, it echoed not just a miracle, but a memory of when people tried to reach beyond what was given to them and paid the price. The Bronze Age may be gone, but the dream remains. We still build upward. Towers, rockets, signals sent into space, still asking the same question. Are you there? Maybe Jack's story isn't just myth. Maybe it's a soft echo of ziggurats and pyramids, of prayers carved in stone and ladders that once stood between man and sky. And maybe the real magic was never in the beans, but in the belief that up was possible. He didn't come back empty-handed. Jack returned from the sky with things no one had seen before. A goose that lays golden eggs, a harp that sings without hands, a bag of coins that never runs dry. We call them magical. We call them rewards. But were they ever meant to be his, or anyone's? Let's look closer. The golden goose, life that replicates itself, an unending source of wealth, but also a living creature, a sacred animal. In some cultures, Geese were messengers between worlds, guardians of the threshold between life and death. To take such a being wasn't just theft, it was disruption. The harp, an object of sound, of soul, it sings, it feels, it weeps when Jack takes it. In Celtic mythology, harps were instruments of truth and memory. Bards used them to keep history alive. In the hands of the gods, they sang of creation. In the hands of mortals, they became echoes. The bag of coins, the least magical, yet the most dangerous. Endless wealth, no effort, no earning. Just gold. Always gold. In ancient myths, Endless treasure is never a gift. It's a curse, a burden, it rots the soul. Just ask Midas. Jack didn't just bring back riches. He brought back symbols of life, of art, of power, and he treated them like prizes. But maybe they weren't prizes at all. Maybe they were meant to be protected, held beyond human reach, guarded by something old, something we called a giant only because we couldn't understand it. And Jack, he didn't earn them. He took them, he broke in, he killed to keep them. In the myths, there's a word for that: sacrilege, theft from the divine, a mortal touching what was sacred. So what did he really return with? Not just treasure, but knowledge. The goose taught him the illusion of infinite gain. The harp taught him that beauty mourns when it's misused. The coins taught him that enough is never enough. Jack was no longer a boy when he came back. He had gone where humans weren't meant to go. He had seen what lay above. But what he brought back wasn't light. It was shadow. Because in every ancient tale of ascent, those who return from the realm of the gods are marked. Not blessed. Marked. Changed in ways they can't undo. And maybe the real treasure wasn't the goose or the harp or the gold. Maybe it was the climb itself. The daring, the reaching, the brief, terrifying moment when a human stood in the house of gods and looked them in the eye. And maybe what he stole wasn't wealth, it was remembrance. And the price of remembering is that you can never forget. We tell it like it's a bedtime story. Simple, harmless. A boy, some beans, a stork, a giant, a treasure, a happy ending. But stories aren't always what they seem. Sometimes they're scaffolding. They hold up what history forgot. And when I look at Jack and the Beanstalk now, I don't see a fairy tale. I see a warning. Because buried in that story is a structure so old you can't date it with ink. Only with echoes, a ladder to the sky, a theft from something sacred, a return that leaves nothing the same. That's not fiction. That's a mythic scar. Passed down across continents, across centuries, in different names, different symbols, but the same wound. And what strikes me most is how familiar it all feels. We're still climbing, aren't we? Just look at us, building rockets instead of beanstalks, chasing knowledge instead of harps, consuming the earth in search of heaven. We call it progress. We call it curiosity. But deep down, I wonder, are we any different from Jack? Hungry, restless, trading what's real for what we can't quite explain. We leave behind mothers, lands, people, promising we'll bring back something better. And when we do come back, we hold out our hands, offering gifts we don't fully understand. But the real question isn't what we bring back, it's what we break to get there. Jack chopped down the stalk. He severed the bridge. He ended the connection between worlds. Maybe he thought he was protecting himself. Maybe he didn't want the gods to follow. But in doing so, he made sure no one could climb again. The sacred path, gone. The memory, faded. The price, paid in silence. And that's the part we never talk about. We call it a triumph, but maybe it was a loss dressed as a victory. Maybe the giant wasn't the enemy. Maybe the sky wasn't a place to conquer. Maybe the beans were a gift, but only if you knew how to use them. And maybe, just maybe, the story still waits for someone who will climb differently. Not to take, but to ask. Not to steal, but to remember. Because the truth behind the magic beans isn't about gold or castles or monsters. It's about the cost of curiosity, the beauty of reaching, and the silence we leave behind when we forget why we climbed in the first place. That's what I think anyway. And the next time you hear that story, listen carefully. Not to Jack, not to the giant, but to the stork. The one that rose overnight. The one that cracked the sky. The one that might rise again, if someone dares to plant the right seed.